Hi, everyone. You're tuned into DeProgram. I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall. With me is CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou, and that weird thing around is my cat's tail. I'm trying to shoo him away. Big story today is Harvard University, something that I didn't think I'd ever see happen. One of the most powerful institutions in the country, the oldest college in the country, going way back to the colonial era before the revolution. Now possibly it's back on its heels. It's not just at war with the Trump administration in sort of a hilarious look at these all these old white guys fighting each other. There's actually concern that Harvard might be in real trouble, and that they might actually, have to close, shut down, somehow curtail their operations, that they are at a disadvantage against the Trump administration, something that I did not think we would possibly see ever. I mean, to me, Harvard seems like impervious. It's older than the Republic, a lot older than the Republic. It's, we've had many former presidents went to Harvard, many members of Congress, captains of industry.
Hundreds of Nobel Prize winners.
I mean, it's Harvard, right? I mean, it's literally the most important college and university in the United States. I say this as someone who went to Columbia. And I read in today's New York Times that, the government currently holds all the cards. John, what shocked me and really surprised me, and I think I could see why some of my right-wing friends might be upset at Harvard, the statistic that 27% of Harvard students are from overseas, that blew me away.
I was surprised by that.
I don't think that any college should not have international students. I think they really, enliven the academic experience for everybody, including them, and it's including for Americans. But more than 1 out of 4, I don't know.
Yeah.
That might be obviously they're a profit center. They don't get financial aid. So at close to $100,000 a year for undergrad, the college is going to rake in close to $500,000 per international student, free and clear. I know they say they don't think about these things, but we know they do. They have to. And then also, a lot of those people end up staying in the United States. They get job offers here in the U.S. That causes brain drain for countries overseas, but supposedly it's a benefit for our economy. But I can see nativist and xenophobic resentments really coming front and center here, from people who are underemployed in STEM and other fields, and they feel like, I didn't get into Harvard. How come this person from XYZ country got into Harvard? Where do we start here? Oh, I guess I should say the Trump administration has ordered, under Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, has ordered Harvard to completely stop accepting international students, which said would be a major financial blow.
And those international students that are there must transfer to other universities immediately.
I guess presumably the spring's term is over.
And a federal judge yesterday froze that decision pending a hearing. This is clearly unconstitutional. The administration can't do it, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the administration has successfully terrified Harvard, and by extension has frightened other universities into proactively doing what Donald Trump wants them to do. There's no downside to having international students. I mean, look at Stanford. It's like half the campus is Chinese, and most of them stay and work in tech companies in Silicon Valley. It's good for the United States. It's good for our economy. This is just a swipe that Donald Trump is taking against Harvard because there have been pro-Palestinian and pro-human rights demonstrations at Harvard, just like there have been at Columbia and elsewhere, that he does not approve of. And this is something maybe you and I should talk about at some point, maybe even today. And that is what appears to be distance that Donald Trump is putting between himself and Benjamin Netanyahu as a person, while still just carrying Israel's water. I heard yesterday, a friend of mine said, we used to say that Trump was Netanyahu's bitch. And now it's more appropriate to say Trump is Israel's bitch. maybe not Netanyahu's.
Yeah, no, that is what it looks like. I think that's really well said, John. I couldn't agree more. Up until recently, it was kind of like, I guess it makes sense, right? I mean, prime ministers come and go. Netanyahu, obviously, I mean, I'd like to say he's not long for that post, but he's been around, he's been around a long time. So don't count him out. But but definitely, we really saw, in particular after the shooting of the two Israeli embassy staffers, how the conflation of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism has been, it's official administration policy. Everyone in the administration, including the president himself, repeated that talking point over and over. This was an anti-Semitic act. Still, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. That may well prove to be true, but we don't know. And at the same time, most of the corporate media has been pretty much willing to go along with that as well. Although there was an interesting piece in the Times today where, blink and you miss it, and you might miss it on the op-ed page, sort of echoing a point that I made in my syndicated column from 2 weeks ago, saying that this may have been partly the result of violence directed of this sort is the result of conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, and that it's always been dangerous from a Jewish point of view to do that. Obviously, there's a lot of Jewish people who are very opposed to Netanyahu, his government, his policies, the war in Gaza, and so on, and have been for a long time. But they somehow, have been unpersoned in all this. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. For years and years and years, I always heard this whole Israel controls everything. They're the puppet masters in the U.S. in the highest corridors of power. And I've always been very reluctant to subscribe to that because it feeds into anti-Semitic tropes. Okay, I know that's in contradiction to what I just said, but it kind of does. And it's also, but it's becoming harder and harder to escape that this tiny little country the size of New Jersey is telling the biggest, most powerful country in the world, maybe not the biggest, but the most powerful country in the world, what to do and what tune to dance to. It's weird.
It is weird. It's inexplicable to not just foreign nationals who ask about it, but to a lot of Americans. Like, how did this happen? How did we allow this to happen? Because this wasn't always the case. There's a famous video, you can find it on YouTube, I did, of Harry Truman talking about U.S. recognition of Israel in 1948. And he said that, the U.S., of course, was heavily involved in the creation of the state of Israel. It was the first country to recognize Israel, although the Soviet Union said that they recognized Israel first. And Truman said in this video that by the end of the negotiations, both the Jews and the Muslims hated him. And that's how he knew that he had done a good job. Looking back historically, not really.
That's a talking point. I'm sure you've heard from what I call militant moderates. They always say that, right? Like, like I have a friend who's a top-ranking editor at the New York Times, and he always says, I know the liberals hate me, the conservatives hate me, so that's how I know I'm right. I'm like, that's not logical. I mean, you might be right in those circumstances, but also sometimes the facts lead you to an extreme. Sometimes extremism is correct. Sometimes there is no reasonable middle ground. Like, for example, being against the genocide in Gaza. Oh, what's the middle ground? Like half genocide? I mean, that's not a reasonable position, right?
Right.
Only extremism, being completely against it, is the reasonable position. So it's very strange. I mean, a lot of people don't really understand or remember the history of how the U.S. came to recognize Israel, right? But I guess we could have a history lesson some other time. But so I mean, I'm interested in why Harvard is
why Harvard? I wondered about that.
Most of the protests were the biggest protests that started them all were at Columbia. And Columbia has been targeted, but they, to my knowledge, have not been told that they can't accept international students. Also, there were much bigger protests at other schools, like on the West Coast, for example. Mm-hmm. But they don't, I think UCLA had some major, very violent confrontations, and most of the violence coming from the pro-Israel students.
Yes.
So, I mean, but still, those schools haven't been targeted apparently at all. So
what about GW? Right here, two blocks, literally 2 blocks from the White House. GW had large, active demonstrations, a tent city, but the new president of GW just caved proactively, got on her knees, and told the White House, we'll do anything you want us to do. So any student who had been involved in the protest was not permitted to walk in graduation. Some of them have been banned from campus, despite the fact that until a week ago, they were active students. They did everything proactively that the White House would have wanted them to do. And Harvard didn't. To their credit, Larry Summers made a statement yesterday that Donald Trump has no idea what the Harvard psyche is like. That if he thinks that this is going to make Harvard bow to him, he doesn't know anything. And the first thing they did, which literally everybody predicted, was that they would file a suit. They filed the suit within hours. Yesterday, a federal judge froze the White House order. Now it's going to have to play out in the courts. I'm confident Donald Trump is going to lose. But that's really not...
must have been prepared in advance.
Had to be. You said weeks and weeks ago that a lot of the major universities were consulting one another and preparing for this kind of event. And sure enough, it came, but they were ready for him.
But that said, apparently, look, let's review some of the actions that have been the Trump administration has unleashed against Harvard. The most recent, no, you're not allowed to have international students. Actually, brand new, breaking just a few hours ago, the Trump administration, Department of Homeland Security, is demanding all records concerning international students, what classes they took, their financial records, like how did they pay, as well as whether there's any evidence that they participated in pro-Gaza protests, if there's campus security cameras or anything like that, that would indicate that. The tax-exempt status of the university is under attack. They're being threatened with an audit by the IRS. So, it's ironic as hell that this administration, which campaigned so vociferously against the weaponization of government, that they actually created a congressional committee about it. That they are now, that these people they're weaponizing government against Harvard, all guns blazing. And here's the part that, if I were hanging out with the president, I would ask him, I'd be like, sir, you do realize that you picked this fight with Harvard. Harvard was willing to sit down with you, and you guys they were talking, and then some jackass in some department accidentally hit send on a maximalist list of demands saying, we want everything. And Harvard freaked out, and, they thought that was real, and now they think they can't talk to you. This might be a situation where you're the calm person. You can step in and maybe personally talk to the president of Harvard and try to bring this thing in for a landing. It's not going to be a good look for, if you're trying to make America great again, it's not a good look for America to take down its greatest, most famous, most prestigious educational institution.
I'll tell you what, I am proud to say that I got a certificate in leadership from Harvard's Kennedy School. And I was so proud that I put it on my LinkedIn page and I bought a Harvard t-shirt. I'm not a kid. I'm 60 years old.
Oh, I know. 10 years ago, I was invited to speak at Harvard. And it's one of the proudest moments of my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
I got admitted, but I didn't get to go because back then they had this policy where my parents were divorced. My dad was rich. My mom was poor. I lived with my mom. My dad didn't want to pay. So I couldn't go to Harvard. But the point is, I'm still, even if you just stipulate for the sake of argument that you can get as good an education anywhere else, which is probably almost true. almost true. I mean, I think there's a lot of great you can get a great education anywhere. Yeah. And that, you know, a lot of this is hype and it's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's all hype. I don't think it's all bullshit. But let's just say some of it maybe. But let's just say you stipulate that. Still, the fact is, the reputation is the reputation. You're not going to be able to change that branding. You know, like, you know, McGill University calls itself the Harvard of Canada. Stanford is the Harvard of the West Coast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, that's exactly right. Vanderbilt is the Harvard of the South.
It's the standard. And so, I mean, it does seem to me, as an outsider, that what the administration, they're coming down on them like a ton of bricks, not because of really anything specific that happened at Harvard, but because they're fighting back, because they're refusing to roll, because they said, we're not going to talk to you anymore. But again, that they were going to roll. So it's like, at least somewhat, they were willing to talk about it. They were willing to make concessions. You know, the acting president of Harvard, it was, you know, moderate guy. You know, he thought that he was sympathetic to some of the pro-Israel, you know, arguments there about what had happened on campus. So, I mean, the administration is kind of like, well, you know, you're fighting us back, but, you know, they're fighting you because of the way you handled this.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely right. You know, Donald Trump has been very busy the last couple of days too, not just ordering Kristi Noem to attack Harvard, but I don't know if you happen to see the report in the Washington Post. It was based on an initial scoop by Politico. Donald Trump yesterday fired 400 staff members from the National Security Council. 400. First of all, during the George W. Bush administration, when I was interacting with the National Security Council on a daily basis, there were like 35.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I can't believe. I mean, my father once had dealings with the NSC, and I don't remember it being this massive office.
It wasn't.
What happened here?
It ballooned during the Obama administration. Trump shrunk it in his first term. It ballooned again during Biden. And Trump got rid of just about everybody. So they're not really fired. You don't really work for the NSC. You do a rotation to the NSC. So almost everybody at the NSC is really an employee of the CIA, the State Department, the Pentagon, or the Treasury Department. And you're there to coordinate policy. And that's been sort of the raison d'etre of the NSC. It's to coordinate foreign intelligence and defense policy. Donald Trump has a completely different view of what the NSC should be. He believes that the NSC should be a personal advisor to the president, period. We don't need a shadow State Department, a shadow Defense Department, a shadow CIA to coordinate policy, he says. We need somebody who can oversee policy at a 30,000-foot level and advise the president. And I have to say, I agree with Donald Trump on this. You know, it's just like the ODNI.
So they'll get rotated back, right? To where?
Yeah. They just that's what I mean. They weren't really fired. They just rotate back to their home agencies. Yeah, I agree with Donald Trump on this. Just because if you look at the precedent that was set by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, when ODNI was first created, it had about a dozen employees. Well, now it's got like 4,000 employees.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's insane.
I mean, it's not, even if we assume they all play an important role, the fact that they grew so big so fast is something that ought to raise flags.
Yeah, it ought to. You've got these shadow organizations. How many CIAs do you need? How many State Departments do you need? Why do you have multiple people making foreign policies? Isn't that what the Secretary of State is for? Why do you have people second guessing the Pentagon? Right? It should be a civilian leadership and the military Joint Chiefs.
The United States, I mean, is the United States government, to me, seems to be increasingly taking on the Byzantine organizational characteristics that we used to look at in the Iranian government, which for a long time, not only under the current government, but even under the Shah, has always had these overlapped, like Venn diagram on Venn diagram on Venn diagram, and it's always been frustrating for some people to make deals with Iran because you shake hands with someone who's important, but maybe he's not the guy. And maybe there is no the guy. There's 4 the guys or whatever.
Right.
And it's hard to identify who they are. And that's what this government is getting to be like. It reminds me of this crazy story. I don't know if you remember this. The Village Voice broke it years ago during the Gulf, right after the Gulf War, about how this all started. And the Voice's reporting was pretty solid, that basically in the summer of 1990, Saddam Hussein was getting increasingly perturbed about Kuwait's side drilling into Iraq's oil reserves. And at the same time, also perturbed because he was part of OPEC, and the Kuwaitis were undercutting the cartel's prices on the international market. And it's like, obviously that undercuts the idea of a cartel. And so is to set prices, and you can't have anybody underset. So the Saudis and the other members of OPEC leaned on Saddam and said, these little pipsqueaks, they're in your backyard. That's like historically your sphere of influence. Like, swat them down, make them stop. And so Saddam apparently personally called the State Department in like July or August of 1990. Pardon?
Close. He summoned April Glaspie, who was the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. And in fact, April's mom lived with her in Baghdad. She was quite elderly, and they were going on vacation the next day. And so she reported to James Baker, the Secretary of State, that she had been summoned by Saddam, and she was going to go see him. A bunch of us analysts at the CIA were huddled around the computer in the operations center, waiting for the no disk cable, the no distribution cable to come back, eyes only for the Secretary of State, which of course means the Secretary of State and the CIA operations center. And so this is where the major disconnect was. Baker wrote back to April and told her that the U.S. policy was that the United States will not take a position on Arab border conflicts, because everybody assumed he was just going to take that little 2-kilometer strip that was the southernmost tip of the Rumaila oil field where the Kuwaitis were slant drilling. Saddam assumed that the U.S. knew he was going to take the whole of Kuwait.
Now, and what's part of the issue that a lot of people in Washington were on vacation at this time?
Oh yeah, everybody was on vacation. It was the 2nd of August.
Right, so no one was around. President George H.W. Bush presumably was in Kennebunkport. So that you couldn't get a basically.
Actually, he was.
Go ahead.
He flew back. This kind of made my career early on. We wrote a paper on June 30th saying we believe Saddam Hussein is going to invade Kuwait and he's going to take the whole thing. And the reason we did that is because amongst ourselves, we just could not agree if he was going to take all of Kuwait or just the Rumaila oil field. So we sent a cable to the U.S. Defense Attaché in Baghdad, and we said, this weekend, do you mind driving to the border and then driving back and just tell us what you see? So he drove down to the border with Kuwait, went back to Baghdad to the office and sent us a cable and said that literally the entire Iraqi military is driving to Kuwait. So we published a paper on June the 30th, 1990, saying Saddam Hussein is going to invade Kuwait and he's going to take the whole damn thing. Well, April had her meeting with Saddam on, I think it was July the 31st. And said the U.S. doesn't take a position on Arab border disputes. Saddam saw that as the green light because he believed that we believed that he was going to take the whole thing, and we had no objection to it. And so he did. He took the whole thing. That morning, we knew it was coming that night, the night of August 1st, U.S. time, August 2nd, Kuwaiti time. And I got to the office very early, and when I got there, my boss said, don't take off your jacket. We're going to go to the White House. It was like 6:30 in the morning. And I had never been to the White House. I was 25 years old. And I had only been at the agency for 9 months. So we get in the car, we go to the White House, a Marine escorts us into the Oval Office. It's the president, the vice president, the national security advisor, the CIA director, my boss, and me. So we wait for the president to sit down. Everybody else sits down. And the president says, well, now what do we do? And it took me a second, but I said, well, Mr. President, as you know, Iraqi troops crossed the border into Kuwait at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they overthrew the Kuwaiti government, and they installed a puppet government led by Dr. Ahmed Khatib. We actually know a lot about Ahmed Khatib. He graduated with a medical degree from the American University of Beirut, where he was roommates with George Habash, and together they created the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Wow. And Dan Quayle goes, Jesus Christ, like that. And we just sat there all looking at each other. Well, it turned out later that afternoon, something famous happened. Margaret Thatcher called Bush and said something that has become well known in international affairs. She said, now's not the time to go wobbly, George. And that's what kicked him into gear. Next thing you know, we send 565,000 troops to the Middle East. And beyond that, we had never put an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf before because it was deemed to be too shallow. Well, within 3 months, we had 6 carrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf. Wow. We thought it would be too shallow and they would be too difficult to turn around because they're so big. They need such a wide berth. 6 carrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf at the same time.
He didn't go wobbly.
He did not go wobbly. He blew it later. Read my lips, no new taxes. Yeah.
I still remember the Gulf War ticker tape parade.
Oh yeah,
parade.
Yes.
I was very excited because I knew that this would be a good day to renew my driver's license at the DMV. Smart. No one was going to be there, and no one was.
Smart. No.
So wow, that's a great story, John. We should move on a little bit because there's still much more to talk about. I don't know how familiar you are with the world of graphic novels and cartooning, but I assume you know about Art Spiegelman. He was the creator of the graphic novel Mouse. And every now and then, I've been a longtime critic of art. I think arguably I might be his number one critic. I wrote a cover story for the Village Voice that became, by some standards, according to the letters editor there, had received more letters than any other article in the history of the Village Voice.
Oh my God, what did you say?
And that's really stupid. I mean, it's cartooning. It's not that important. But I said that basically Art Spiegelman was wildly overrated, that his work, he doesn't produce much work, and what work there isn't that good. That Mouse is okay, but the main thing is the Holocaust is a sexy topic. That he also had outsized control in the world of cartooning, particularly in New York, through he and his wife, who was the editor at one of the key editors who selected illustrations and cartoons at the New Yorker. And that between the two of them, he was a professor at School of Visual Arts in New York, that basically they controlled the world of illustrations and cartooning, and not in a positive way, that they were not benevolent dictators, that they kind of just basically were running a grift for themselves and their friends. And it's basically, I would say, the response in the cartooning community was 50%. Ted Rall is completely full of shit and just jealous of Art Spiegelman, which is not true. And 50% thought I was right. So that was back in the early 90s, speaking of the Gulf War period. Late 90s. It was a little bit later than that. Anyway, so Art is currently in the New York Times today, arguing that, so he was the subject and I'm very jealous of him about this. PBS did one of their American Masters series about him. And I mean, that's exciting. He's 77 years old.
You've made it. Yeah.
You've made it. Yeah, no question. That'll never happen to me, I'm sure. But anyway, the point is, obviously it was a loving portrait, but at some point he had done a cartoon that had been distributed by him and Francoise at the Women's March in 2017 against Trump's inauguration, that basically showed Donald Trump as literally a shithead. He is, instead of his hair, he has a turd on his head with flies all over it. And basically it was a cartoon that, never appeared in print anywhere except like self-published. And anyway, so at some point there was a 90-second clip, I guess, depicting that cartoon, and the word came down from PBS and WNET that this should not appear. This should be excised from the final documentary, and basically there was dispute. They agreed to do it because they had to, but now it's coming out, and Art Spiegelman and his allies are crying censorship here. They're saying this is in response to the pressure that the Trump administration is putting against public broadcasting, right? Like by threatening to cut all federal funding for PBS and NPR, which parenthetically, I still don't understand how NPR in particular, which gets less than 1% of their funding.
Less than 1%. Yes.
Just let it go. Like,
who cares?
And not to mention, a lot of NPR people are paid insanely well. If you look at these paychecks, I mean, like the local broadcasters here at WNYC, they make over $400,000 a year. That's ridiculous. I think, look, God bless them, except for the fact that they're begging for public money. And I think people who accept public funds should work on a narrow, they should tighten their belts a little more.
Yeah, agreed.
That's me. And if you've ever been to NPR, I'm sure you have, NPR headquarters in Washington.
Oh yeah, and I told them, don't ever call me again,
because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's luxurious. It's sumptuous. I mean, I used to work at KFI Radio in LA, which is a 50,000 watt powerhouse, mega station in LA. It's like vintage 1970s shag carpeting, wires falling out of the ceiling, asbestos. And it doesn't need to be that much of a dump. But the point is, that's how most radio stations are. And it's like, and I was like, don't call me for funding. Is that why you're saying that?
No, because they were assholes to me. Steve Inskeep, who I freaking can't stand, tried to do a gotcha interview with me. And the first words out of my mouth were, "Oh, no, you don't. I'm not playing this game with you." And we were live.
Oh, God.
We were live. Oh, yeah. He ended the interview as quickly as he could. Before I even got out of the building, my phone started ringing. And people were saying, "Oh, my God, I just heard your fight with Steve Inskeep. Good for you."
I've got to go look that up.
To these assholes. Oh, yeah.
Well,
and they never called me again. I said, "Don't ever call me again." And they never did.
That's awesome. Well, so anyway, I'm a careful observer of Art Spiegelman, and he's never missed a chance to criticize me either. And so it's kind of been like a feud in the world of cartooning, such as it is. But anyway, the point is, to me, this looks like a little bit like a grift, right? Like, I mean, so WNET and PBS, they're saying, look, a year ago, before Trump would have been, after us, we still wouldn't have run a cartoon on PBS depicting, the president with a turd and flies on it. And I have to say, I believe them. I think that's true. PBS is very tasteful. They try to be classy. It's conservative. Yes. It's G-rated. It's family. Already, they made some allowances for Spiegelman to have some cursing in his American Masters. And so they're running it at 10 o'clock at night instead of 8 o'clock at night. As for me, I'd want you to bleep out any cursing that I did. I'd rather run at 8. Yeah. Cursing's not important to me. I like to do it, but it's not a political stance. So, but I mean, whatever, you do you. But it just seemed to me like, if you claim to be censored, you can really get, you can really win. Like the Pulitzer Prize in cartooning this year went for a second time to Ann Telnis formerly of the Washington Post. She quit the Washington Post because she felt that she couldn't do as many anti-Trump cartoons as she wanted to. But she wasn't fired, and they didn't want her to quit. They asked her not to quit. But kind of like the vibe is that she was fired or pushed out. And in their attestation, the Pulitzer board said one of the reasons we gave it to her was to send a message to the Washington Post, which is, by the way, I wouldn't want that. I'd want to win or lose. I'd want to win because of my work, not because they're trying to tell the president to go to hell. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this. I don't know. I mean, and also this is a guy who's like, I'm also kind of like thinking, American Master for what? He produces almost no work. I mean, he's like the least hardest working man in cartoon show business. I mean, he's got like a few books. He doesn't put out any cartoons of any note any time. Really, seriously, like you can name 100 political cartoonists. They've all done more work in 6 months than Art Spiegelman has created in his entire life. And he's not very good. I don't know. The whole thing just drives me kind of crazy.
Ted, is there any fallout for you, or has there been any fallout for you for criticizing somebody like him? If he's seen as the guy in the industry, what happened to you?
Well, for example, immediately after the Village Voice article appeared, one of his acolytes, this sort of low-level illustrator who I'd never heard of before, took it upon himself to impersonate me in emails to my editors to try to make me look like even more of an asshole than I really am, and including the New York Times, where I was a regular on the op-ed page up until that point. My editor calls me up and says, "What the fuck is going on?" I said, "Oh, that's not me. That's this other person." And he's like, "Well, I just can't. I don't want to be involved in like your drama." So I was fired by them, and that kind of thing. It was like kept happening. So finally, I sent a cease and desist to this dude. Long story short, I had to sue him. It became a big cause célèbre for him. Basically, he framed it as if I was trying to censor him and deprive him of his First Amendment rights, which you don't have to impersonate another person. Okay, it's like I sign all my work under my own name. I say everything I have to say under my own name. I don't sock puppet. I don't use fake names on social media. I don't give my own books positive reviews like Dave Eggers got caught doing one time.
Yes,
I don't do that kind of thing. And so but anyway, people took each my side or his side. He had a benefit concert against me. There were 2 books published about how I was an asshole called Legal Comics. I mean, compilations of people, some of whom used to be my friends. R. Crumb came out against me in favor of Art Spiegelman. In favor of Art Spiegelman's friend. So it became a big contretemps. My career definitely isn't the same because I did that. I don't care. I would do it again. It felt like this is like, what this is like. I feel like sometimes someone has to take out the trash. Like George Clooney felt like he had to take out the trash when it came to Joe Biden. It's no fun. No one else is doing it. And you're like, okay, I'll do it. Fuck it. That's how I felt. I mean, Spiegelman's influence was nefarious. And it's not what it used to be, but it was very much a negative thing. So I was like, I'm taking out the trash. And by the way, it wasn't exactly like only my idea. I had quite a few Confederates who were, helping me do the research and stuff. And I got so many crazy stories about him. My favorite one was that Art Spiegelman, I guess, collects vintage comics too. And he had in his car, someone broke into his car in Manhattan and stole some of them and sold them to St. Mark's Comics, which is comic store.
Yeah, famous. Yeah, down on St. Mark's Place.
Yeah, and so anyway, and the owner of St. Mark's Comics told me the following story. So Art Spiegelman walks in and says, "Oh, those are my comics that you're selling." And the guy says, "Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, this guy came in and just sold them to me. I'm sorry. I'd like to give them back to you." And Art just walks out without saying a word, right? Comes back with several police officers, has them arrest him and drag him off to the Tombs for the weekend until things get sorted out. And the Tombs is the lockup in Lower Manhattan in Chinatown. And it was the city prison, the city jail. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, the guy, everyone in the world of comics, it's a very small, insular world. We all know each other. He's a good guy. He didn't knowingly buy stolen merchandise. Immediately, he was horrified, and he knew who Art Spiegelman was. I mean, he was going to give the stuff back, but Art didn't want that. He wanted his pound of flesh, and that's kind of how he is.
I would have set all of it on fire. I'm that kind of a person.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I like your style. I think Art got his stuff back, and basically he was just like, the guy from St. Mark's Comics was none the worse for wear, I guess. But and it makes a story. But I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, he's kind of a bad person. So
I worked near a guy. We were both in the counterterrorism center together. He was far senior to me, and he was the head of the CIA's Special Activities Division.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's such a great name, Special Activities.
So he wrote a book. He retired from the CIA. He wrote a book. And Covert Action Magazine asked me if I would write a review of the book. So I bought it. I read it. And I said, the book is kind of a typical CIA memoir. This is where he grew up. His parents were immigrants from Castro's Cuba. He grew up in Hialeah, poor, joined a gang, learned, karate and weapons. And he loves his wife and he hates communism and he did lots of cool things for the CIA. What he didn't tell you is that he was investigated by the Miami Police Department for 3 different murders that were committed on behalf of the Cali cartel. And he has never answered to accusations made by Vanity Fair that he was an assassin for the Cali cartel before being recruited into the CIA, specifically because he was an assassin for the Cali cartel.
Was that on his resume when he applied?
Right, I know, right? He was friends with a station chief who then became the head of counterterrorism. The guy's wife comes after me. And then because
you weren't scared about giving a less than glowing review to a man with those bona fides.
I figured he's a big boy. He'll be able to take it. And it's in Covert Action. Nobody's going to read it.
Right.
Or the people that do read it weren't going to buy the book anyway.
Right.
So his wife came after me and made threats. So I reached out to...
I would take those threats seriously.
Yeah. I reached out to a mutual friend who had been the Assistant Secretary of Defense. And I said, Marianne, you got to call this woman off. Because otherwise I'm going to have to call the cops and then it's going to be all ugly. Mm-hmm. And she said, yeah, I'll talk to her, but you should be ashamed of yourself, the things that you wrote. I was like, yeah, okay, all right.
No allegation, no assertion that they were false, of course.
No.
Wow.
No. Yeah, you just never know with people.
No, you really kind of never know. It's like, yeah, well, I could go on about Art Spiegelman, but we have other things to discuss. I wanted to get your take on it's the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. And now there's some interesting statistics coming out. After everything's played out, you would really think that, all the reorganizations of police departments, the new rules about community policing and so on would have at least put a dent, not to mention police cameras, the ubiquity of phones, they're videoing everything, would have put a dent in police killings. By police killings, I kind of don't like that phrase because it's ambiguous about whether it's the police doing the killing or being killed.
Being killed.
Here we're talking about the police doing the killing.
Indeed.
And so they're up. They're not skyrocketing, but it's a steady increase year after year. More cops, are killing more civilians in encounters. And one of the working theories, which I don't know if you want to laugh about it as much as I did, is that it's because of the increased attention to the police that people they distrust the police more. And because they distrust the police more, they're less cooperative. And if they're less cooperative, they're more likely to be shot.
I'll tell you why I disagree with that so strongly. I am addicted to watching at least an hour's worth, usually 2 hours worth, every single night of TikTok videos of what are called First Amendment auditors. Okay. A First Amendment auditor is somebody who stands on a public sidewalk or in, a public easement and just takes video. It could be video of a church, video of a police station, just to provoke a response. Now, there shouldn't be a response because this is constitutionally protected activity. If you are in public, you can film anything that your eyes can see. So what these guys do is they'll go, for example, to a police parking lot and just photograph all the license plates of the cop cars. The cops lose their shit every time.
Wow.
And they go all around the country doing this. So I think that the reason why killings are up are because the cops are no smarter now. They're no better trained now. They're no more knowledgeable now than they were when they murdered George Floyd. Where's the training? Where's the education? Cops don't even know the most basic laws, the most basic rules. They'll get out of their police car. It's illegal to photograph a person without their consent. On what planet?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. You can photograph anything your eyes can see.
Cops make things up.
This
is
do.
very, very minor. I'm driving back from the beach in the Hamptons once back to my house. I used to live out there, and I was barefoot. There's a checkpoint, as there often is in the Hamptons, just randomly. I don't know what. I think they're mainly looking for expired registration tags.
Sure.
And anyway, he looks through the window and he sees my barefoot and he goes, "Put your shoes on. You can't drive barefoot." I'm like, "Excuse me, officer, there is no law or ordinance that says that whatsoever." In fact, studies have shown it's actually safer to drive barefoot because you can feel the vibration of the car more.
Exactly right.
And so, thinner soles better than thicker soles. When you wear boots, it's harder to drive, right?
Sure.
And he's like, looks at me, and he goes, "Well, I'll write you a ticket." I go, "Well, you're going to have a hard time writing that ticket because you're going to have to fill in an ordinance that I violated." "What ordinance is that?" He goes, "You're a smart ass. Get the fuck out of here." And I was like,
"Yeah, I thought so. Tough guy."
Yeah, dick. So, yeah. So the thing is, and I think part of it, so for me, I think there's, bad policing is a perfect storm, right? First of all, it's recruiting a lot of former vets, way too many former military people, not enough civilians, not enough thoughtful people. Also, you must know, I bet you know this story. Years ago, a person applied to some police department in Connecticut and was rejected on the grounds that he took an IQ test and he tested really high.
I remember that.
And
that was in the news.
It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed the police's right to discriminate against intelligent people.
Yes.
That tells you a lot about, what they're looking for.
You can say that again.
Police. And so they have this, they don't have a guardian mentality. They have a soldier mentality. What drives me crazy is when I hear, the number one job of a police officer is to come home safe and sound to their family. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Make sure we come home safe and sound to our families. The job is you may die. That's the job, like being a firefighter. Right. And if you don't like that job, don't take that job. It's a fucked up mentality. The militarization, the military hardware, even the way they dress. They're wearing Kevlar.
Kevlar.
Who's shooting you?
Yeah.
And also, it's probably going to make you, even if you're a nice person, I don't know about you, John, if I'm carrying like 40 pounds of body armor all day in the heat, I'm going to get crabby. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to get grouchy. I'm not going to be in a great mood when someone sasses me when I write them a ticket. So I think this all plays into it. And, but there's been no retraining. It's just not a priority.
No.
I mean, Black Lives Matter was an incredibly effective movement because it was day after day after day after day all over the country because of the pandemic, and people didn't have jobs they had to be at. Mm-hmm. And so, but even so, even that movement, once it stopped, it all went away. There have been no reforms.
No, none. There have been literally no reforms, or there have been a handful of reforms that the Trump administration has announced in the past week they are repealing.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, it's sick. I mean, what's it going to take? I mean, I guess more dead black guys, right?
Yeah, right. That's what it's going to come to. Yes. Yeah, unfortunately.
So, shall we talk about Iran?
Yeah, let's talk about Iran. It's hard to know who to believe on these U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. Day before yesterday, the Iranians said that they were not going to participate in future talks. It was done. The Americans weren't serious. They come in with one policy. By the end of the day, they've got a completely different policy, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Donald Trump changes his mind all day long.
Yeah. It all depends on who last talked to him. Right?
That's right. With that said, there were talks yesterday. They did not go terribly well. And the lead Iranian negotiator at the end of the day came out and said that he did not believe there would be any agreement between the U.S. and Iran on Iran's nuclear program. It's all about the level to which the Iranian uranium can be, what do you call it? Purified.
Enriched.
What did you say?
Uranium enrichment.
Enrichment. Thank you. Enriched. Sorry, I had a mental blank. To which it can be enriched. The CIA has said repeatedly in both national intelligence estimates and special national intelligence estimates that the Iranians do not have a nuclear program, a nuclear weapons program. They don't have it. The United States a week ago said we could live with Iranian nuclear enrichment if the enriched uranium then is moved to a third country, preferably to Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. And the Iranians were like, yeah, but what about Israel? Israel's not even a member of the non-proliferation treaty. They're not a signatory to the non-proliferation treaty. Everybody knows that not only do they have their own nuclear program and their own nuclear weapons, but they purchased South Africa's nuclear weapons when apartheid fell apart. Everybody knows this. And the U.S. is like, yeah, we're not talking about Israel. We're talking about you. And so they're stuck on this level of enrichment and where the enriched uranium would be housed. Now, a lot of the enriched a lot of what the U.S. is offering is acceptable to the Iranians. But because we negotiated the JCPOA, we pulled out of the JCPOA, we made threats, we allowed Israel to bomb, go back and forth, and then there's this love letter to Khamenei, and they just don't know what to believe, and they don't feel that they can trust this administration. I'm hopeful.
I mean, it even ties into our Harvard discussion earlier, right? I mean, just like there's not a consistent line. I mean, at a certain point, it's not even like, I mean, that's bizarre, right? When you really think about it, this is when you have an administration that could come to terms. They're not really far apart on a lot of things. I think Russia is having similar issues with Trump. They just don't know where these guys stand. I mean, well,
Putin said 3 or 4 years ago when Biden was president that he preferred Trump because Trump was willing to talk to anybody. But at the end of the day, he would say that he had to prefer Biden because at least Biden was predictable.
Right.
And his predictability allowed Russia to make and maintain a policy.
Right. I mean, I think for Trump's unpredictability is a feature in some circumstances.
Yeah.
In terms of keeping the deep state off balance and it's on its hind legs domestically. But when dealing with your potential adversary, you definitely need to have, your the things that you can do, the things you can't do, the things that you have wiggle room on. And it just doesn't seem like this administration, he can't do it personally. And there's no big boy kind of like holding down the fort. I mean, it's really bizarre following the Jake Tapper book, which I'm almost finished with, to sort of to grok that basically these nobodies who were really running the country under Biden, the first lady's number one aide, people you've never heard of, that those people had a consistent policy in a way, even though nobody knew who they were.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. Deep down, I really, really hope we can come to some sort of an agreement with the Iranians. I blame Donald Trump for the fact that we don't have an agreement with Iranians, because we did when we had the JCPOA. The JCPOA had exactly the same monitoring rules that we had under UN Security Council resolutions relative to Iraq and its programs. Those rules worked, right? Lead seals on all the facilities and extensive security cameras everywhere that were monitored in Vienna at the IAEA. It worked. And Donald Trump yanked us right out of it. So why would the Iranians trust us?
I do think we have, this is a minor thing. I agree with you. This is Trump's problem and Trump's fault. But also, Iran doesn't have good messaging. And I know it would be very difficult for Iran's messaging, even if it were better and smarter and more tailored to the U.S. market, to penetrate the wall of American militaristic propaganda. But even so, they should be repeatedly harping on the fact that, A, we're only adhering to these limitations voluntarily. We don't have to. We can have there's no law that says we can't have nuclear weapons if we want them, or that we can enrich as much as we want. That is, we're just doing that because that's what we want to do. That we inherited the Non-Proliferation Treaty from the Shah. We could have said we had a revolution and we're a different country now. Fuck the Shah. We're doing our thing our way. We honored that agreement signed by our predecessor government.
That's right.
But they should harp away at those things. We're just being nice. And the way that the American government has acted under both political parties for years is as if Iran was some kind of pariah state that had committed some kind of crime, and that they were being punished. And this is they haven't earned the right to come back into the nuclear community. None of that is true, but that's kind of the implication.
That's exactly right. That is exactly correct.
There's rumors that this weekend Israel is going to launch launch a military strike against Iran.
Yes.
Do you think that's going to happen? And if so, what will it look like if and when it happens?
I don't think so, because I think it would be seen as such a naked act of aggression, unnecessarily launched, and just a bald-faced attempt to draw the United States into conflict. I don't think even Netanyahu has the wherewithal to do it right now. Not while talks are ongoing. No.
He's also overextended. Netanyahu's got a lot going on in Lebanon.
He sure is.
West Bank now, Gaza. Yeah. And U.S. public opinion of Israel is it's basically around the level that Biden has. It's rock bottom. It's never been this low before, and I don't think it's out the floor yet.
I agree. And you pointed out a week ago that now there are, IDF conscripts that are just refusing to report for duty. They're just not doing this anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess the penalties must not be that harsh.
I guess not.
Here, they're very harsh.
You can say that again.
Choose not to show up, during the Vietnam War. Fuck you. I'm not going.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to prison.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. And yet people did do that. To their eternal credit, really,
and didn't run to Canada.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I did know a guy. I did know a guy who ran to Canada. It was very jarring when I was a kid. I don't know. I was probably 10, and it was like, or 9, and he was like, the guy was 17, and then suddenly he was 18, and then suddenly he wasn't around anymore. And then I went to the post office where they had all the wanted posters clipped together. And there he was, clipped like along the bank, alongside like the Symbionese Liberation Army guys and people. Like I was like, that's Ken. Like,
oh my God,
Ken's not a bank robber. I don't understand.
Oh my God, how times have changed.
It was so fucked up.
Wow.
I do feel like we're rolling backwards though, in some respects.
I think so too.
Well, I hope you're right about Iran. I hope the Israelis just feel like they just can't do that. I want to just remind everyone, we would really appreciate it.
Very much.
If you would subscribe or follow us or hit like or share us on your socials or all of the above. Shows like this live or die based on your support or lack thereof. So, it doesn't take much. We're not even asking you to send money, although on Rumble you can, and we wouldn't say no in any way, shape, or form. One pitch, please buy my book, What's Left. You can buy it through my website, rall.com/books. You'll see it on the top. John, any closing remarks?
No, just that we are going to, very soon, we're going to start trying to do this regularly, maybe 3 days a week, at a set time, and get our act together.
Yeah, we're going to try to make it. The set time, I think, is helpful.
Yes.
Although, unless it's a set time that you can't watch, in which case we apologize in advance. But
52 people on a Saturday, thank you very much for doing that and spending an hour of your Saturday with us. It really does mean a lot.
I'm seeing 132 right now live.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Through the StreamYard. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's really good. I mean, I think that's bigger than we usually get. So
yeah.
I was just reading actually that Saturdays, I didn't know this. Saturday's a big day for these news shows on the internet. And I didn't know that. I'm from the creature. I grew up with old news where the Saturday newspaper was where it was the dead paper that nobody read.
That's right. It was the thinnest paper of the week.
No advertising. No. Yeah. Everyone's waiting for the big Sunday one. Everyone's out shopping and barbecuing, hopefully. Anyway, thanks everyone. We'll see you again soon next week. Have a great weekend and really appreciate you. Bye.